morning and welcome to our Friday edition of A View from the House. My name is Asanda Mbeche. In our program this morning, President Jacob Zuma calls on traditional leaders to work with government in promoting farming to youth and rural communities. The controversial Transport Laws and Related Matters Amendment Bill is passed by the National Assembly but rejected by opposition parties. Later in our program, we'll bring you more questions to Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe in the National Assembly. But first, President Jacob Zuma officially opened the National House of Traditional Leaders at Parliament in Cape Town yesterday. The President's address focused on three aspects: nation building, food security, and the promotion of indigenous heritage. He warned traditional leaders of increasing urbanization and migration to cities, which he said could leave arable land lying fallow. He said land deprivation over many years has led to young people having a grim view of agriculture. This, he said, could threaten South Africa's food security. The President called on traditional leaders to work with government in promoting farming to the youth and rural communities.
Those living in rural areas aspire to move out of the villages as soon as they can. We need to change the situation. We need to make them appreciate the economic importance and centrality of agriculture. We must encourage them to study agriculture and food production sciences at school and universities. Our educational institutions at both secondary and tertiary level must respond to this challenge and channel resources adequately and appropriately. I therefore humbly request this august House to support government in making agriculture and farming look cool and attractive as a career choice to our youth.
The President also called on traditional leaders to assist government with the implementation of land reform. He said people who missed the 1998 land claims application deadline should be assisted to apply for the return of their land. He said government is also exploring means of allowing those who were dispossessed before 1913 to also obtain justice. There was another matter of concern to the President.
You will assist us in encouraging those who get their land back to use it and not resell it. Selling the land, at times selling it back to those who have been owning it previously, defeats the purpose of changing land ownership patterns in our country. Much as we criticize the system we adopted, that it has not been sufficient since 1994, but we have also worsened it by selling the land back or just sitting with the land, not doing anything to make it productive. The program of reversing land dispossession must be undertaken in a manner that corrects the injustice while also promoting agricultural stability and food security. We must think together on this issue. It cannot be the government or only or alone. All of us, we must think together. How do we correct the land problem in our country? Because if we don't, if we think it is the right of individuals or smaller groups to do whatever they want, including selling back the land, then we are not dealing with the land issue properly. We need to agree that there are things we cannot be allowed to do, even if we think we have a right, because they affect the national land equation. With the support of the traditional leaders, the land reform program will be successful in all respects. In other words, traditional leaders must make it their business to discuss this issue. It cannot be allowed to be discussed by government only. And I think in your meetings, you must discuss it so that you could reach a common understanding and therefore the common agreement as to how to handle the land question.
President Zuma also called on traditional leaders to work with government and other sectors of society in rebuilding the moral fiber of society. He condemned the spate of violent protests and crimes against women and children.
Traditional leaders are well placed to work with government and other sectors to rebuild the moral fiber of our society. We believe it is important to look at the root causes while also addressing the symptoms of the sickness. The police are dealing with the symptoms in relation to criminal activity. As far as general crime is concerned, the levels have decreased over the years. However, the crimes against women and children remain high and are of concern. But the police continue to make inroads. During the last financial year, the unit secured over 363 life sentences, with a conviction rate of 73% for crimes against women above 18 years old, and 70% for crimes against children under 18 years old. With the support of the community, most suspects in the high-profile rape and domestic violence cases have been arrested. I've also directed the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster to implement measures to nip violent protests in the bud. We are doing this to build a culture of responsibility, accountability, respect for authority, and the respect for one another. People have a right to protest, but there is no need to use violence to get the message across.
President Zuma said government has identified the regeneration of the moral fiber and the strengthening of families and communities as a priority. He said having realized the weaknesses in the family structure of society, government has decided to fast-track legislation which has produced a white paper on families through the Department of Social Development.
The existence of taverns near the schools and the fact that owners allow school children to patronize these areas indicates the level of decay in our society. The abuse of alcohol, drugs, and other substances is a contributory factor in some of the crimes that are committed. We can't look away as the society in general, but as leaders in particular, particularly the traditional leaders. This is your society that is being made to look like something unacceptable. It's your society, it's your children, it's your people. If you want to, it's your subjects. Now, if we don't act at this level of the traditional leaders, who else must? These matters may look small and insignificant, but on a larger scale, they take us to the problems we face currently of wanton lawlessness.
The controversial Transport Laws and Related Matters Amendment Bill has been passed by the National Assembly but rejected by opposition parties. That's our story after the break. Don't go away.